What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Zach, and today's subreddit is r/ProRevenge. This story's called Fired. Are you sure? Okay. Note 1. This story was told to me by a friend and is about her father. I won't be able to answer many follow-up questions. It takes place around 2005. I believe the story to be true, but can't verify it, of course. Note 2. This happens in Sweden, where there's no at-will employment. Once an employee is past the initial 6-month probation period, you can't fire them without a cause, which also requires an established paper trail. Note 3. I am not a native English speaker, and professional terms may be wrong. I'm happy to take any corrections. So, my friend's father, since retired, was a mechanical engineer. He was around 55 when this happened, and very experienced in his field. In fact, he had some skill sets that were close to unique, to the extent you might be able to replicate them, but at extreme costs. We're talking multiple people from multiple companies from multiple countries taking weeks, if not months, to get up to speed with specific projects to do the same things. He was also a no bullcrap kind of guy who did his job, did it well, but also pointed out problems and expected others to point out problems to him. He was extremely solution-oriented and had no time for office politics or keeping a positive attitude at work. Basically, your everyday grumpy older engineer who really knew his thing and always ready to help if you asked, but not very forthcoming in team-building exercises and so on. He also ran his own business on the side, doing minor projects and so on. As was required by his employer, he had reported this and was sure to not cause any conflicts of interest, so his employer knew and accepted this. He was considered a valuable employee and got several awards that he cared little for, but anyway, during his many years with this employer. By all accounts, they paid him well, respected his knowledge, and accommodated his style, and he returned the favor by working very hard and making sure to mentor younger and newly employed engineers to make them effective coworkers. Then, his firm was acquired by a larger firm, and a new management team installed. Initially, everyone was promised that things would remain the same, but with the new management came a new office culture. The new management pressured for unpaid overtime for a more American corporate culture with cheering and clapping and so on. He considered it extremely cringe and refused to participate. His status as a long-standing and knowledgeable employee kept him safe for some time before the new management realized that resistance to the new culture centered around him and started pressuring him to play along. When he did not, they turned increasingly hostile, realizing that he held a lot of soft power in the company, having mentored a large percentage of the engineers, and resistance to their leadership centering around him. They started ordering him to work overtime. He answered that he was on time with his projects, and that if they had identified an emergency requiring overtime, they would have to bring it up with the union to negotiate the overtime and make sure it was an actual emergency. The contract with the union said no overtime unless in an emergency. They tried to force him to participate in the cheering and clapping by making it mandatory for him to attend and yelling at him to participate. And he did, but so unenthusiastically that the event turned even more cringe and people started laughing. The workday turned more and more hostile. He knew that things would come to head sooner or later. Being an experienced engineer and knowing how to document things, he already had his ducks in a row. Then it finally happened. They caught him answering an email for his side business on his work laptop and brought him in and fired him on the spot for theft of company resources. He sat at the conference table and looked the 3 managers in their eyes, one after the other, and asked, "Are you sure you want to do this?" They all said yes. "Are you really sure you want to do this?" He was escorted to his desk by security to leave his phone, his badge, and his computer at the desk, and then then escorted out. Once out of the building, he phoned his union representative, who immediately canceled the firing, claiming there was no just cause, which meant that it would go to the labor board for arbitration. You see, the company had an IT policy that it was okay to use the company laptop for personal business, including a side business, as long as you were on break and compliant with IT security protocols. And the company was aware of and had approved his side business, and he was on a break. Of course, he had his declaration of a side business signed by his former manager and the IT policy available, and sent both to the union representative. Then he called his lawyer and asked him to send the pre-prepared cease and desist on 2 patents he held. Patents that were not that significant and nothing he could make any serious money out of, since they were mostly for very specific things used by the solutions he designed and used at his employers, but still his, that he had brought with him into the employment and allowed the employer to use in exchange for a slightly higher pay, all duly documented in his contract, of course. Then he went home for some vacation and tending his side business. He was always a man to prepare and had enough money saved up to last him for a good time, to the extent that he considered retiring entirely. My friend said he had 2 job offers from competitors that had looked to sniping him for some time within the week, basically as soon as they learned he was available. He was gracious but declined, but offered them to consult with his side business now that he had the time, which they eagerly accepted, at twice the hourly rates he had made at his earlier employers. His colleagues started ringing the day after for advice, since the projects he had managed could not go on without him. He was perfectly polite, but denied any information and help, saying he had left everything he had with management and to contact them, as he was no longer employed there. Several clients that phoned his private number were told the same thing. Since his private number was not on a public registry, he suspected that both colleagues and clients spent some time and/or money to find it. It took 2 weeks before a manager phoned him and asked things. He politely declined to answer, got yelled at, and replied with something like, "I'm sorry, you must have mistaken me for someone who works for you," and hung up. This happened a few times, and the next week, HR phoned him and stated the firing had been a mistake and he was welcome back to his job. He again politely declined, saying that he awaited the labor board's decision, but until then, he was happy to consult for them at 6 times his hourly pay, after taxes and administrative costs, of course. After a few days of wrangling and trying to negotiate, they had to accept, and then he sprung the patent issue on them, forcing them to pay for those too. Less than 2.5 weeks after being fired, he was back at his desk. After roughly 3 months, the firing came to the labor board. The employer stated that they believed they had handled the issue correctly, but were still willing to offer my friend's father his position back in the interest of goodwill and reconciliation. My friend's father and the union simply stated that he was now employed elsewhere, his own company, and no longer available. The labor board ruled in my father's friends and the union's favor, and he got the normal damages: 3 months pay damage and 24 months pay severance package, including pension and, of course, the lawyer costs of the union paid by the employer. According to my friend, her father continued to work there until he retired, working 20 hours or so per week and 10 to 15 hours for other companies, making a pretty penny, continuing to charge them 3 times what he charged their competitors as a booty hole tax. The managers were not fired, but they were moved into their own group apart from the rest of the department when it came to bonus calculations, and the cost of her father's consultancy fees and the costs of the labor board arbitration were budgeted there, meaning they were constantly over budget and thus ineligible for bonuses for several years, which was a decent percentage of the incentives at that company, making at least one of them quit. My friend also said her father usually met any management complaints with a big poo-eating grin, and "What are you gonna do? Fire me?" after that. What a badass. See, that's what it is. If you have a really unique skill and a big company needs that skill, and yeah, you've got them in your pocket. Man, just the amount ton of power this guy has with his skills. What kind of stuff does he have to do? Like, what is this guy's job description that it is so impossible to replace him with even just like a group of 3 people? Like, that's crazy and badass. Awesome. All right, this story's called Summer Camp Bully Gets Canceled. This happened at a Christian summer camp 40 plus years ago. I went every summer, not because I liked all the Bible classes and brainwashing, but just to get out of town for a few weeks a year. And they had swimming, horseback riding, canoeing, etc. The incident was from a summer when I was around 11 or 12. There was a mean kid who bullied me every summer. He was sadistic, mean as crap, and especially targeted me. I complained to camp staff and was told something along the lines of, "Jesus, turn the other cheek, forgiveness, blah 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 blah." Nothing was done. You could take various courses, and one was a canoe class that culminated in an overnight canoe camping trip. Of course, Bully Boy was going. We canoed and camped out by a river away from the summer camp. The kids were all swimming in the river, and Bully Boy kept dunking me under the water and holding me down. I'd come up gasping for air and go down again, over and over. He had let me up and I'd gotten my breath when he pushed me under again. This time I got away from him, held my breath, and swam underwater down the river as far as I could. When I came up, I saw him and some other kids frantically looking for me. I took another big breath, submerged, and swam even further downstream and out of sight. I climbed up on the bank and waited. Here's what I was told by other campers, as I didn't witness this part. After looking for me and not finding me, the kids started to panic and got a counselor. How a bunch of kids were left unattended long enough for this to happen, I still don't know. Bully Boy told the counselor that we'd all been swimming and I disappeared. The other kids ratted him out, said that he drowned me, and full-on panic ensued. Staff from the main campground were called and a search party began, while Bully Boy cried, thinking he'd killed me. I'm not sure how long the search lasted, but it must have seemed like forever until I was found down the river on the bank. I played it up big time, acting all upset and shivering. I told the counselor that Bully Boy had held me underwater and I couldn't breathe. And the next thing I knew, I was on the side of the river and had thrown up a bunch of river water and didn't know where I was. Back at the main camp, all the management had assembled for a meeting. Bully Boy approached me and tried to apologize, and I acted all freaked out and hid behind an adult. Damn. His parents were called and he was sent home and banned from ever attending camp. My parents were called and the camp leader must have freaked when my mom answered law offices, as she was my attorney father's secretary. I talked to my parents and said I wanted to stay at camp and they were fine with it. No lawsuit. My parents weren't litigious. The rest of the summer went great without Bully Boy there to harass me. I attended for a few more years until I began asking too many questions in Bible study and proclaimed that I didn't believe in any of it. Oh shit. Time had come to part ways. I hadn't thought much of this since then, and I wish I'd asked my parents about it. My mom has passed and my dad has dementia, so I won't get their take on the situation. Note, my parents weren't religious. I went to the camp because my favorite cousin went, and I wanted to go. I wonder if Bully Boy ended up in prison, the sadistic little sociopath. I don't know. I feel like that might have scared him straight. Hopefully. Let's have a little bit of a silver lining there, other than the fact that he left and the camp was a cool thing. But let's just hope that Bully Boy was like, oh, damn, I thought I killed a kid. I'm gonna stop doing dickish things like that. Like, you know, trying to drown someone. Probably isn't gonna go well. Alright, this story's called Defense Lawyers Keep Stealing Our Trash in Hopes of Making My Aunt, who was violated by her doctor, look like she was getting around and wanted it. We placed something else in the trash. Oh, many moons ago. I was about 10ish. My aunt was a victim of violation of a horrible degree while she was getting a routine surgery from her doctor. That is absolutely messed up. Needless to say, things got really messed up rather quickly. Now, we don't have a lot of money, so the doctors obviously lawyered up to the teeth, and they were trying to dig up anything they could to paint put my aunt in a bad light. She got her one lawyer and soldiered on. A few months into the lawsuit, we noticed random cars kept stealing all of our trash. So she hired a private eye and found out it was the defense lawyers doing. Now, their cars were pretty nice. It was always a Range Rover or a black BMW, possibly 7 Series because it was quite large, that would pull up and dump the entire contents of the trash in the trunk and speed off. This was unsettling to say the least. So my aunt and mom hatched a brilliant plan. There were 4 cats in the house, so we had a rather large supply of cat piss and poo at our disposal. We simply saved up enough of this until the trash was about 3/4 full of straight up litter. Oh, not bagged either, just right into the can. It was then topped off with random shredded documents. It looked like a jackpot of a find, and a ton of smell good stuff to help hide the stink. The next trash day, like clockwork, they showed up in the black BMW and 2 people quickly picked up the can and dumped the entire contents in their trunk. They were furious and started losing their crap at the end of the driveway. To top it all off, my aunt walked outside with a cup of coffee, waved and said, "Good morning," all cheerful like. They sped off and we never saw them again. She ended up winning the case about a year later. Wow! Let me clarify that the litter wasn't a full dump from pan to can. It was sifted over a long period of time and collected. 2 men tilted the can in the edge of the trunk and then lifted from the bottom. I'd say about 70 to 80% got into the trunk when they realized what was happening and let go of the can. First of all, hell yeah, we hate rich people getting away with obvious things that they committed. Second of all, badass story, badass revenge, they're trashy. Ha, get it? Alright, this story's called Ask Me a Favor and Then Slam Me? Well, good luck. Got a neighbor across the street. Never dealt with him much until last week. Okay, Dr. Seuss. He came over when I was in my garage. He told me he was having an ATV delivered and wanted to know if the semi could use my parking lot to pull into and if I would be kind enough to use my forklift to take it across the street into his garage. Hey man, no problem. Always happy to help. Later that night, I'm on Nextdoor. I don't go on it very often, but sometimes I like to see what people are saying. And I see this about my company. Well, I see XYZ is still shut down over the pandemic. That's okay. The owner's kind of an ass and sells Chinese junk anyway. To which I replied, hey, good luck finding a place to pull that semi into tomorrow, and good luck getting that pallet to your garage. Also, yes, I am an ass. He never said anything back. I never opened the gate on the parking lot and didn't help move the pallet. I did sit in full view of him as he was forced to unpack the pallet at the end of his driveway and walk it to his garage piece by piece. He ordered the ATV from a website. They do not come fully assembled. First of all, now I have another thing to impulse buy. Second of all, I suck at counting. Fourth and fifth, yes. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.